The mountain gave no warning. One moment the Greyvale Pass was quiet under its weight of late winter snow, the kind of quiet I had ridden through 100 times, cold and absolute, the kind that tells a man he is small and the peaks are old. My war party moved single file along the narrow shelf of the road, 14 wolves, and 3 young ones I had brought north, to learn the passage. Routes before the spring thaw. Davin, my second, rode at my shoulder. The youngest of the 3 pups, Ren, barely 15 months into his wolf, was complaining about his boots. Then the ridgeline moved. I have no better word for it. The whole upper face of the southern ridge simply shifted, and the sound came a breath later, a sound I had never heard before and have not forgotten since. Somewhere between thunder and the end of a long conversation, I shouted. My horse reared. The white wall came down across the pass, and I was inside it before I had finished the word. Snow is not gentle at speed. It is a fist. It is a room with no walls pressing from every direction at once, and it does not stop. I rode it down the slope with no more choice in the matter than a stone. I lost the reins. I lost Davin. I lost all sense of which way was sky. And for a long, cold moment, I thought, so this is how a king dies. Alone in the white, unremarkable, the mountain unbothered. I came to rest against a shelf of rock 30 feet below the road. I was alive. I did not understand why. I stayed still long enough to note nothing was broken, then dug myself free and climbed back up through the churned snow. The pass was unrecognizable. A new landscape, white and brutal, the road gone, the horses scattered. I could hear wolves calling. I found Davin pulling himself upright near the edge of the slide, his arm held at a careful angle. I found 2 more of my men buried to their waists, shaken but breathing. I found the horses one by one, standing wide-eyed in the trees below. I did not find Ren or the other 2 young ones. That fear is a different kind of cold. It settles in the chest and does not move. I had brought those 3 north myself. I had told their families the pass was safe. I began to dig where I had last seen them, my men working alongside me, and the snow gave nothing back. It was Davon who heard it first. Not a sound, exactly, but a change in the quality of the silence on the western edge of the slide. He pointed. I went. What I found stopped me where I stood. A woman crouched in the snow at the base of a broken spruce, her arms spread wide. Her body curved forward over 3 figures curled against the tree's exposed roots. Ren, Pell, little Cora, the youngest, her dark hair full of snow. All 3 alive, all 3 pressed against the woman's chest and sides, sheltered by the tent of her body and the spruce's upturned roots. The woman had her face turned slightly away, her eyes open, watching the last of the small debris still sifting down from above. She was not looking at me. She was watching the ridge, making sure it was finished. She had come from somewhere above, and to the left I could see where she had slid, the long track in the snow, and she had thrown herself over my wolves like a roof. I stood there for a moment I cannot properly account for. A king should move. A king should be doing something. I was not doing anything. I was looking at a woman I had never seen, in a place I would not have expected any living soul, who had covered 3 of my youngest wolves with her own body and was checking, carefully, practically, whether the mountain was done. Are you hurt? I said. She looked at me then. Brown eyes, steady, a little wind-burned. Snow in her dark hair, a healer's satchel half buried beside her, the strap still across her chest. No, she said. These 3? I went down to them. Ren had a gash on his temple, already clotting. Pell was shaken but whole. Cora had not made a sound. She was looking at a woman with the fixed attention of someone who has decided, without any process of reasoning, that this person is safe. Her small hand was still gripping the woman's sleeve. Ren needs stitching, the woman said, already opening her satchel. She did not ask my name. She did not ask theirs. She moved with the unhurried sureness of someone who had done this 100 times in worse conditions, cleaned the gash, threaded her needle, worked while Ren held still with the slightly offended dignity of a young wolf who does not want to appear frightened. When she was done, she checked Pell's ribs with her hands, asked him to breathe, told him he was bruised but nothing more. She gave Cora something warm from a clay bottle. She did all of this before she stood up. I had been watching her the entire time. Not in the way a man watches a woman he has taken a liking to. In the way a man watches something he cannot fit into any frame he owns. She was not remarkable to look at. She was not armed. She had no rank about her, no insignia, no wolf pack marker at her collar. She was dressed for the mountain, practical and worn, the kind of gear that meant she had been out in this for days. She was a healer traveling alone through the Greyvale Pass in late winter, and she had heard the slide coming and she had gone toward it. That last part is what I could not set down. My wolf had gone quiet the moment I came near her, not the alert stillness of a threat, the deep quiet that I have only felt once or twice in my life, the kind that means, stop, pay attention, this matters. I told myself it was the cold. I told myself it was the shock of the slide. I was a king who had led 100 campaigns, who had stood at the edge of real and lasting danger more times than I could count. I was not shaken by an avalanche, and yet I could not stop looking at her. She stood and shook the snow from her coat. She looked at the three young wolves, apparently satisfied. Then she looked at me with a directness that most people in my presence do not manage. The road will be impassable until tomorrow at least, she said. There is a way house 3 miles west. I can get you there before dark if your men are able to walk. You know this pass, I said. I cross it 4 times a year. She glanced at the ridge. I heard the fracture point go. The snow has been settling wrong on that face for a week. A week. She had known it was coming and had come through anyway because she had work on the other side. Your name, I said. She looked at me for a moment, as if deciding whether the question was the business of a stranger she had just met in a snowfield. Neve, she said, and there it was. I do not know how to explain what happened when she said it. I have tried a number of times since, to myself and to no one else. It was not a grand thing. It was not a light or a sound. It was more like recognition. The way you feel when you have been searching for a word for a long time and it finally surfaces. The word was always there. You simply did not have it yet. My wrist burned, not painfully. A warmth that moved from the inside outward, the way an ember breathes when you blow across it and it decides to live again. I looked down without meaning to. The skin of my wrist, just below the edge of my sleeve, was flushed gold. A faint shape, still forming, the mate mark I had carried blank for 34 years. I pulled my sleeve down. I was not ready. She had turned away to help Davin with his arm, and she had not seen it. We walked to the way house. The 3 miles took the better part of 2 hours. Davin moving carefully, 2 other men limping, the young wolves exhausted and subdued. Neve walked at the pace the slowest man needed without making anything of it. She kept Ren beside her, checking his eyes every quarter mile for the blankness that means a head wound is worse than it looks. She was not warm in the easy social sense. She did not make conversation. She did not perform ease. But there was a quality to her presence that I noticed because of its effect. My wolves settled around her, not cautiously. Not the way animals settle around a competent stranger. The way they settle around someone they already know. By the time we reached the way house, Cora had fallen asleep against Neve's shoulder, carried on her back for the last mile without a word said about it. I watched all of this. I kept watching because I could not stop. Inside, Neve built up the fire and oversaw the dressing of Davin's arm with the same quiet efficiency she had brought to everything else. She declined the food my men offered twice. On the third offer she accepted, which told me she was hungry, but had been waiting to be certain there was enough for everyone before she took any. I noted that too. Later, when the young wolves were asleep near the hearth and my men were drowsing, I sat across from her at the rough table near the fire. She was repacking her satchel, checking each item, replacing what she had used with careful inventory. You slid down into the avalanche path, I said. She did not look up. I heard them. You could not have known they would survive. No, she agreed, still sorting her supplies. But I could hear where they were. I looked at her hands. Strong, scarred in the small ways a healer's hands scar, from instruments and splints and 100 sharp edges in difficult places. Capable hands, the kind you trust instinctively. Why? I said. It was not an eloquent question. It was the only one I had. She looked up then. The firelight was on her face, and she considered me for a moment with the same level attention she had given the ridge earlier, assessing, unhurried, without particular deference. They were afraid, she said, as if this were answer enough. And perhaps it was. I did not sleep that night. My wrist burned steadily until morning. I lay in the dark and felt it, and thought about Neve sleeping 2 rooms away, and the fact that I had ridden through the Greyvale Pass 100 times, and never once crossed paths with a mountain healer who traveled it alone in late winter. I thought about Cora asleep against her shoulder. I thought about the way my wolf had gone quiet, not the watchful quiet, but the settled one, the one that means, I know this person. I have always known this person. I am not a man who mistakes his own feelings. I have ruled Vorthane for 11 years. I understand power and its obligations. I understand what it means to act on something that cannot be undone. I have not acted carelessly in a long time, and yet, in the morning she was up before the rest of us, checking on Ren by the cold gray light from the window, her breath visible in the chill. She had found hay for the horses. She had assessed the road outside and determined it was passable from the west approach. When I came to stand beside her, she did not step back. The slide is navigable by midday, she said. The eastern shelf is still unstable, but you can go around it if you keep to the tree line. I know, I said. She looked at me. I know where your route takes you, I said. West over the Vorthane Ridge, down to the Callow Valley. A 3-day walk from here. A pause. Yes, I will escort you. She studied me. That is not necessary. No, I agreed. It is not. She was quiet a moment. Then is there a reason you are looking at me like that? There were about 14 reasons. I chose honesty, because I had learned that there is no dignified way to evade a woman who asks direct questions with that particular quality of stillness. I pulled back my sleeve. The mark on my wrist had settled overnight into its full shape, the fated mate bond. The mark my mother had carried, and her mother before her. The one that had been blank on my wrist. So long I had stopped believing it would come. It was gold in the morning light, precise and unhurried, as if it had always known, and simply been waiting for me to catch up. Neve looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at her own wrist, and I watched her expression change. Not with alarm, not with calculation, but with something quieter and more careful. She pushed back her own sleeve. The same mark. Fainter, still settling, the mirror of mine. She was silent for long enough that I began to consider what I would say if she turned and walked out of the Way House without a word. I had no good answer for that. I had no plan. For perhaps the first time in 11 years as Alpha King of Vorthane, I had come to a situation entirely without a plan. She looked up. I have heard of the mate bond, she said. I did not think it was something that happened to a healer in a Way House after an avalanche. Nor did I said. I expected a great hall, perhaps. Better lighting. A startled quiet, and then she laughed. A real laugh, brief and unguarded. And something in my chest released that I had not known was held. My men had woken. They were filtering out from the back room, stopping when they saw us standing at the window in the cold morning light. Davin looked between us with the expression of a man who has served his Alpha King for 8 years and has learned to recognize the moments that change things. I turned to face them. There are things a king is required to do with ceremony and preparation, with counsel and formality, and there are things that cannot wait for any of that. I looked at Neve, and she looked back at me, and I knew which kind of thing this was. I went down on one knee in the cold flagstones of the Way House floor. I had never knelt before. Not before a council, not before another king, not before anyone. It is not something that had ever seemed necessary or possible. I was Aldrich of Vorthane, the Mountain Kingdom, and the mountain does not kneel. But the mountain also does not throw its body across 3 frightened wolves to shield them in the dark, and she had done that without hesitating, and I did not believe a man should receive something like that standing. You saved 3 of mine, I said. You asked nothing for it, and you are preparing to walk away. That is, I have no better word than extraordinary. Neve, the bond between us is real. I am not asking you to take it before you are ready. I am asking you to let me walk with you to the Callow Valley, and to give me the chance to earn what the bond already knows. The Way House was very quiet. Davin was not breathing. Ren had come to the doorway of the back room, his bandaged temple catching the light, and he was watching with the wide eyes of a young wolf, witnessing something he will tell his own children about. Neve looked at me for a long time. You may walk with me, she said at last, and we will see. I stood. The mark on my wrist was warm. She picked up her satchel and moved to the door, practical and unhurried as she had been in every moment I had known her, which was less than a full day, and already felt longer than most things I could name. She paused at the threshold and looked back at me over her shoulder. The eastern shelf, she said. Tree line. Do not let your men get impatient. No, I said. She nodded once and stepped out into the mountain morning, and I followed her. That was 2 years ago. The Callow Valley took 3 days. She did not make it easy. She asked hard questions. She gave nothing away for free. She held herself with the same self-sufficient quality she had brought to the snowfield and the Way House and every mile of the road between. She was exactly who she had been in the worst moment, unhurried, honest, sure of what she knew and careful about what she did not. I did not fall in love with her in the way that songs describe, all at once in a single moment. I fell in love with her the way the snow settles, steadily in the dark while you are not watching, and you wake up one morning and the whole world is changed. She is my Luna now. She has been since the spring ceremony, when she stood before the full pack of Vorthane with the same directness she had turned on a ridge she thought might fall. There is a shelf of rock 30 feet below the Grayvale Pass, where the mountain deposited me the day it decided I needed rearranging. I have passed it many times since. I have never told anyone this, but I am grateful to it. I was a man who thought he had already seen everything worth seeing. He had not.